Have you ever walked out of a conversation and only then thought of the perfect comeback? Maybe it was during a heated debate at work, a job interview, or even just chatting with friends. The sharp, witty line that would have made you sound smart and confident arrives late when nobody's listening anymore. Psychologists call this the staircase wit effect, because the right response shows up when you're already walking away, going down the stairs. It's frustrating, isn't it? You know you had it in you, but in the moment, your mind froze. This experience is far more common than most people admit. According to research published by the American Psychological Association, over 60% of people in the United States say they've lost opportunities, professional or social, because they couldn't respond quickly under pressure. And it's not just public speaking or formal interviews. It happens in networking events, team meetings, college debates, or even in an argument with a partner. In all these moments, the mind slows down while the world speeds up. But why does this happen? Neuroscience gives us an answer. When you're under pressure, your brain activates the amygdala, the region responsible for the fight or flight response. Cortisol spikes, adrenaline flows, and your body thinks you're in danger. That's great if you're facing a bear in the woods, but not so great when you're in a conference room trying to answer your boss. Under this stress response, the brain diverts energy away from the prefrontal cortex, the very part responsible for logic, memory, and clear communication. The result? A blank mind, a frozen tongue, and a missed opportunity. Now, while neuroscience explains the mechanics, Eastern philosophy has been describing this phenomenon for centuries in a much more poetic way. In Zen Buddhism, the mind is compared to water. When the water is turbulent, it can't reflect anything. But when the surface is calm, it mirrors the sky perfectly. Think about that. When your mind is stirred up with anxiety, self-doubt, or overthinking, it loses its ability to reflect clearly. The problem is not intelligence, you already know the answer. The problem is the turbulence, and the solution isn't to push harder, but to calm the water. This is why thinking fast is not a gift you're born with, but a skill you can train. Neuroscientists like Eric Kandel, who won the Nobel Prize, demonstrated how repeated practice literally rewires the brain, strengthening neural pathways, the same way muscles strengthen through exercise. Just as a pianist trains scales until the fingers move automatically, you can train your brain to produce clarity under pressure. Quick thinking isn't a matter of luck, it's a matter of training. The issue is that most people face three enemies that prevent this training from taking root. The first is anxiety. The more nervous you are, the harder it is to organize your thoughts. Anxiety fills your head with what-ifs. What if I look stupid? What if I mess up? What if I forget the words? All this mental noise takes up space that should be used for the actual answer. The second enemy is lack of practice. Americans often believe that conversation, small talk, or even debate are natural skills. You either have them or you don't. But that's false. Just as athletes drill movements until they become reflexes, the mind also needs rehearsal. Without practice, you might know a ton, but you won't be able to access it when the moment comes. And the third enemy is distraction. We live in a hyper-distracted culture. A 2015 study by Microsoft found that the average American's attention span dropped to just 8 seconds, shorter than a goldfish. Between social media notifications, emails, and multitasking, our brains are pulled in 1,000 directions. And a distracted mind can't build a clear line of thought when it needs to. These three enemies, anxiety, lack of practice, and distraction, are like weights holding you back from mental agility. Here again, Eastern philosophy offers a beautiful counterpoint. Taoism speaks of Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action. The idea is not to force outcomes, but to flow naturally with them. When you're anxious, unfocused, and unprepared, You go against the current. The harder you push, the more you sink. But when you enter Wu Wei, the action feels seamless. Quick thinking, then, isn't about pushing harder. It's about learning to flow. This is the purpose of this video, to show you practical techniques rooted both in modern science and timeless philosophy that can help you transform your mind. These methods are simple but powerful. They don't just help you speak better. They help you live better. Research from Stanford University shows that people who train improvisation improve their cognitive flexibility, which means they adapt faster to new situations. That kind of adaptability doesn't just improve conversations, it makes life smoother. Imagine being able to handle surprises at work, at home, or in relationships with clarity instead of panic. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." And that's the heart of this. If you're tired of the perfect response only arriving after the fact, then preparation is the key. Because the world won't slow down for you. The only option is to train your mind to speed up. So before we dive into the practical exercises, in the next section, let me leave you with this. The bridge between your mind and the world is your ability to express yourself in the moment. If that bridge is weak, the world won't see your real intelligence. But if you strengthen it, every conversation becomes an opportunity. And if you want to support this channel and help me keep creating videos that blend science, philosophy, and practice, consider becoming a member. By joining, you're not just supporting content, you're supporting a movement toward clearer, sharper, more authentic communication. When we break down what really holds people back from quick thinking, we discover something deeper. Most of us are trapped by the pressure to be perfect. We freeze not because we don't know what to say, but because we're afraid of saying the wrong thing. That fear delays us, and in conversations, delays are deadly. It takes only a second of hesitation to miss the moment. Psychologists at Harvard have long studied what they call the spotlight effect. It's the tendency to believe that others notice our mistakes far more than they actually do. In reality, people are usually too focused on themselves to catch every stumble we make. Yet, in our own minds, even the smallest slip feels enormous. This magnified fear creates hesitation, and hesitation is the enemy of clarity. That's why reframing mistakes is crucial. In Japanese culture, there's the art of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. The cracks don't disappear, they're highlighted. The broken bowl becomes more beautiful than it was before. Quick thinking works the same way. You will slip. You will forget words. You will fumble a phrase. But if you accept those cracks and keep speaking, the conversation becomes stronger, not weaker. What matters is not the stumble, but the recovery. Americans often admire confidence more than perfection. A person who keeps going after a small mistake is seen as authentic, not incompetent. Another piece of this puzzle is understanding how your brain processes information under stress. Cognitive scientists at MIT explain that our working memory, the part of the brain we rely on for reasoning, can only hold a few chunks of information at once. Under stress, that number shrinks even further. If you try to juggle too many ideas, your brain drops them. That's why you blank out. The trick is not to force your brain to hold more, but to train it to access what's already there faster. That's where techniques and exercises come in, which we'll explore in the next chapter. But before that, it's worth emphasizing something. Quick thinking is not about speaking more words or speaking faster. In fact, often the opposite is true. Some of the greatest communicators, leaders, professors, coaches, speak slowly but with sharp clarity. What makes them appear quick is not their speed, but their precision. The samurai didn't win with 1,000 sloppy strikes. He won with a single clean cut at the right moment. Likewise, quick thinking means finding the right thought at the right time, not flooding the air with words. Stanford researchers found that in negotiation simulations, participants who paused briefly before responding were rated as more confident and intelligent, provided the pause wasn't excessive. This shows that quick thinking doesn't mean zero hesitation. It means controlling the space between question and answer. A deliberate pause to breathe can feel like composure, not panic. That pause is not a blank, it's a choice. This is why Eastern traditions always emphasize the breath. Breathing is the simplest, fastest way to reset the nervous system. In yoga, it's pranayama. In Zen, it's the entry point to meditation. Even in modern sports psychology in the US, athletes are taught controlled breathing to handle pressure. When you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 2, and exhale for 6, you send a signal to your body that there is no danger. The heart rate slows, cortisol drops, and the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, comes back online. Suddenly, clarity returns. Imagine being in a boardroom. Someone challenges your proposal. Instead of panicking, you pause, breathe, and then respond with focus. That single breath is the difference between fumbling and flowing. The same is true in a job interview when you're hit with an unexpected question, or in a college classroom when a professor cold calls you. These moments define careers, reputations, and relationships, and they can all be handled better with a calm, trained mind. Let's not forget the role of practice. Americans love sports metaphors, and this one fits perfectly. You don't wait until game day to practice your swing. You hit 1,000 balls in training so that when the game comes, you don't think, you just do. Thinking quickly in conversation works the same way. You need daily drills, short, simple exercises to sharpen the brain. The good news is these drills don't require hours. Just a few minutes of intentional practice each day can dramatically increase your mental agility. There's another cultural element at play. In the US, we're often taught to idolize the gift of gab, the idea that some people are just natural talkers. But science proves that's a myth. Yes, some people may have early advantages, but sustained performance under pressure is built, not born. Just like in basketball, where talent helps but practice decides who becomes a champion, mental agility follows the same rule. The myth of natural quickness keeps too many people from training a skill they could absolutely develop. And here's where philosophy gives us courage. The Stoics, whose ideas deeply influenced Western culture, remind us that control is the key. You cannot control what questions people throw at you. You cannot control every situation, but you can control your preparation, your breath, and your practice. That control is enough to change everything. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." In a world that demands fast reactions, your preparation determines whether that reaction will be panic or clarity. So, what have we uncovered in this first chapter? We've seen that slow or delayed thinking in key moments is not a sign of stupidity, but a natural response of the brain under stress. We've learned that 3 enemies, anxiety, lack of practice, and distraction, are the main culprits behind blank minds. We've seen how both science and philosophy converge on the same truth. The mind must be trained to stay calm and ready. And we've understood that perfection is not the goal, presence is. In the next part of this journey, we'll dive into the battlefield of the mind. We'll look at specific exercises backed by research, and we'll see how simple practices can transform your ability to respond in real time. These aren't abstract ideas, they're tools you can use every single day. But before we move on, let me leave you with this. Every day, life asks us questions. Some are small. What will you eat for lunch? Others are big. How will you defend your proposal? Will you take this opportunity? Will you speak up for yourself? The quality of your life depends on how you answer those questions and how quickly. The faster you align your thoughts with your words, the more opportunities you seize. And if you've found value here, consider supporting this channel by becoming a member. Your support helps keep this content alive. Content that blends neuroscience, philosophy, and practical exercises to help you become your best self. Together, we're building not just faster thinkers, but calmer, more confident communicators. In the first part of this journey, we exposed the problem, why your mind freezes in crucial moments, and why the perfect reply always comes too late. Now it's time to step into the battlefield of the mind. If Chapter 1 was about awareness, Chapter 2 is about engagement. We're going to face the enemies of quick thinking head-on, understand their nature, and then see how to fight them with practical, proven techniques. Let's begin with the first enemy, anxiety. Anxiety is the silent thief of clarity. In a study conducted by Harvard Medical School, researchers found that high anxiety can reduce the effectiveness of working memory, the mental notepad we use to juggle ideas, by as much as 40%. That means almost half of your brain's processing power goes offline when you're stressed. In practice, this explains why during a job interview, you suddenly forget an answer you rehearsed 100 times, or why in a boardroom you blank out when challenged. The brain has redirected its energy to preparing for danger, even though the only danger is embarrassment. The second enemy is lack of practice. Many Americans grow up believing that communication skills are innate. Some people just have it, while others don't. But neuroscience has thoroughly debunked this myth. Eric Kandel's Nobel Prize-winning research on neuroplasticity proves that the brain physically rewires itself in response to repeated practice. Every time you train a response, you're strengthening neural connections. Without practice, you may know plenty, but you can't access it fast. It's the difference between reading about basketball and actually running drills on the court. On game day, theory won't help. You need reflex. The third enemy is distraction. We live in the age of the fractured mind. Between social media, Slack notifications, endless emails, and constant multitasking, Americans check their phones on average 96 times a day, according to research from Asurian. Microsoft's widely cited study showed that our average attention span has dropped to 8 seconds. A distracted brain can't form clear lines of reasoning. And when it's time to respond quickly, you don't have clarity. You have fragments. So, these three enemies, anxiety, lack of practice, and distraction, form the battlefield. But here's the good news. Every enemy comes with a strategy to counter it. The first strategy is the 5-second rule. This isn't about Mel Robbins' book, though she popularized it in the self-help world. It's about retraining your brain to avoid over-analysis. When faced with a small decision, what to eat, what to wear, which route to take, give yourself 5 seconds to decide. That's it. Why? Because indecision is mental quicksand. The more you analyze trivial choices, the more you train your brain to stall. By practicing fast decisions in low-stakes situations, you rewire your brain to respond without hesitation when the stakes are higher. Taoist philosophy would call this Wu Wei, effortless action, moving with the flow instead of against it. The second strategy is association drills. Pick 2 random words, say apple and clock, and create a sentence that connects them. For example, I was so hungry I ate an apple while staring at the clock, waiting for lunch break. Simple, right? But this forces your brain to link unrelated concepts quickly. It's like push-ups for your mental flexibility. Research published in the Journal of Cognitive Enhancement shows that exercises like this increase cognitive processing speed and creativity. In Zen Buddhism, there's a parallel with koans, paradoxical riddles meant to jolt the mind out of linear thinking. When a monk is asked, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" the point isn't the answer, but the stretching of the mind. Association drills do the same in a modern, practical way. The third strategy is conscious breathing. I know it sounds too simple, but it's one of the most effective tools you have. Try this. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, hold for 2, and exhale for 6. This is called the 4-2-6 method. Studies in Frontiers in Psychology confirm that controlled breathing reduces heart rate, lowers cortisol, and restores access to the prefrontal cortex. That's your thinking brain. In other words, one breath can bring your logic back online. Professional athletes in the NFL and NBA use similar techniques before high-pressure moments. And in the Zen tradition, breath is the foundation of meditation. Whether you're in a dojo or a boardroom, the principle is the same. Control your breath, control your mind. The fourth strategy is rapid-fire Q&A. Set a timer and answer 10 random questions in under 10 seconds each. They don't have to be profound. If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be? What's your favorite book? What's the best movie you've seen this year? The point isn't the answer, it's the speed. This trains your brain to retrieve information under a ticking clock. At Google, similar exercises are used in creativity workshops. In Japanese martial arts, this resembles sparring. You don't know what move is coming, but you must respond instantly. No hesitation. Now let's pause and reflect. These 4 techniques, 5-second rule, association drills, conscious breathing, and rapid-fire Q&A, might sound basic. But together they form a system. The first trains decisiveness, the second trains flexibility, the third restores calm, and the fourth builds retrieval speed. Each addresses a different enemy of quick thinking. Practiced consistently, they rewire your brain to respond under pressure. Think of it like sharpening a blade. Every repetition removes a layer of rust. Over time, the blade gleams, ready to cut cleanly. The samurai didn't draw his sword for the first time in battle. He drilled the same motions thousands of times until they became instinct. That's what you're doing with these exercises, building instinct for clarity. And here's the conflict at the heart of all this. The world doesn't wait for you. In a meeting, the conversation moves on. In an interview, the recruiter doesn't pause for you to gather your thoughts. In a debate, hesitation looks like weakness. That's the reality of modern life. But you can prepare. You can train your mind so that when opportunity knocks, you answer instantly. This is the battlefield. And in the next section, we'll look at how to not just fight, but win, how to turn these techniques into daily practice that transforms your life. These techniques may sound simple, almost too simple, but that's exactly why they work. Complexity creates resistance. You'll avoid training if it feels overwhelming. Simplicity builds consistency. A short 5-second decision, a quick word. Association, 1 minute of breathing, a 10-second answer. None of these feel like much in isolation, but practiced daily, they reshape the brain. Neuroscience calls this long-term potentiation, the strengthening of neural pathways through repetition. Every time you practice, you're laying down stronger wiring. Eventually, the speed and clarity you train for become automatic. The science backs this up. At the University of London, researchers tested groups of students who practiced improvisation drills over 6 weeks. Their reaction time in problem-solving tasks improved by 35% without sacrificing accuracy. Stanford University conducted a study where students practiced controlled breathing before debates. They not only performed better under pressure, but were rated as more persuasive by judges. These results show that what we're discussing here isn't theory, it's proven, measurable, and replicable. But let's address the inner conflict. Most people hesitate to train because they fear mistakes. They think, what if I look foolish while practicing? This fear keeps them stuck. But here's the truth. Mistakes are the training. No athlete becomes great without missed shots. No musician masters an instrument without wrong notes. And no communicator sharpens their mind without a few awkward moments. This is where both Stoic and Eastern philosophy converge. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Zen masters echo the same lesson. Errors are not failures, but doorways. In Japan, the art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, making the cracks part of the story. The piece doesn't hide its imperfections, it wears them proudly. In your journey to think quickly, every stumble is a gold-filled crack, a mark of progress, not shame. Now picture how these practices spill over into daily American life. You're in a high-stakes job interview. The recruiter throws an unexpected curveball. Tell me about a time you failed. Instead of freezing, you take one conscious breath, recall a prepared story and deliver it with honesty. Or imagine you're at a networking event, surrounded by professionals, and someone asks a challenging question about your industry. Because you've practiced association drills and rapid Q&A, your mind retrieves an answer without panic. Or think of a heated family dinner during the holidays. Voices rising, opinions clashing. Instead of shutting down, you stay calm and articulate your view. These are the real-world victories that training creates. Another misconception worth correcting is that quick thinking means talking non-stop. In American culture, where charisma is often equated with constant chatter, many assume being fast means filling the air with words. But true quick thinking is about clarity, not volume. The best responses are sharp, concise, and well-timed. In fact, a pause, used deliberately, can enhance your authority. Studies published in the Harvard Business Review show that leaders who pause briefly before answering are perceived as more thoughtful and confident. The pause is not hesitation, it's command of the moment. So, where does the conflict remain? It lies in your daily habits. If you live perpetually distracted, anxious, and unpracticed, then when life demands speed, you won't have it. But if you build the habits now, when the pressure hits, your mind will be ready. This is the paradox. You train slowly so you can respond quickly. Just as a martial artist spends hours perfecting movements at half speed so that in battle those movements explode without thought, you too must rehearse calm, small exercises daily so that clarity erupts when needed. Let's be clear, the world won't wait for you. In business meetings, conversations move on without you. In classrooms, professors call on someone else. In politics, in media, in relationships, hesitation costs. That's why this conflict is urgent. Modern life demands fast, confident responses. And if you don't train, you leave opportunities on the table, but the resolution is within your grasp. By practicing decisiveness, flexibility, breathing, and rapid retrieval, you turn the enemies of anxiety, distraction, and hesitation into allies. Anxiety becomes energy you can channel. Distraction becomes focus because you've retrained your attention. Lack of practice becomes mastery because you've built a daily routine. Think of the samurai sharpening his sword. He doesn't sharpen once before battle. He sharpens daily, even when there is no fight. That's what these exercises are for. They may feel small, but they prepare you for life's biggest battles. So, as we close this chapter, remember, the battlefield of the mind is not out there, it's inside you. The enemies are anxiety, lack of practice, and distraction. The weapons are simple exercises backed by science and philosophy. The question is whether you'll pick them up and use them. Because in the end, quick thinking is not a talent. It's a choice to train, to practice, and to prepare so that when opportunity strikes, you are not caught silent. In the next chapter, we'll move from the battlefield to the art of victory itself, the resolution. We'll see how these practices, combined with the right mindset, can lead you to a life of sharper thinking, calmer presence, and deeper confidence. What does victory look like when it comes to quick thinking? It's not just about having the right comeback in an argument or winning a debate in class. True victory is quieter, more profound. It's the feeling of walking away from a conversation, knowing you spoke your truth with clarity. It's leaving a meeting feeling that your ideas were heard and respected. It's the confidence of knowing that, no matter what question or challenge comes your way, you won't be silenced by fear or hesitation. Philosophy teaches us that real triumph is not measured by applause, but by inner mastery. The Taoist sages of ancient China often compared the mind to water. Water adapts instantly to whatever shape it encounters. It flows around rocks, fills empty spaces, and carves canyons over time. In the same way, a mind trained for quick thinking doesn't panic when it meets obstacles. It adapts, flows, and responds with grace. Victory, then, is not domination but fluidity. Science once again backs up what the ancients knew. A study published by the American Psychological Association found that people who practiced mindfulness and improvisational drills not only responded faster in cognitive tasks, but also reported lower stress and higher self-confidence. In other words, the more we train, the less our inner voice shouts doubts at us when we're under pressure. Instead, it whispers calm assurance. You've been here before. You know what to do. Let's look at real-life examples. In American courtrooms, lawyers are often bombarded with unexpected objections or tricky questions. The best trial attorneys aren't the ones with the flashiest language. They're the ones who stay poised, who breathe, and who calmly redirect with precision. In Silicon Valley boardrooms, startup founders pitching venture capitalists face rapid-fire questions designed to expose weaknesses. The ones who win funding aren't necessarily those with the perfect product, but those who answer with confidence, adaptability, and composure. These victories, whether in law, business, or everyday conversation, come from preparation and practice. The Eastern martial tradition offers another lesson here. Samurai warriors practiced zanshin, a state of relaxed alertness, where the body is calm but ready, the mind is still but aware. Applied to modern life, zanshin means being present in every interaction. You're not rehearsing lines in your head or worrying about what comes next. You're simply here, listening fully, responding naturally. When you live in zanshin, quick thinking doesn't feel forced, it feels inevitable. But let's bring this back to you, the listener. Imagine yourself in a scenario that used to terrify you. Maybe it's that dreaded job interview. You sit across from the hiring manager, heart racing, but instead of spiraling, you take a slow breath. You remember the drills you practiced. One word, associations, rapid responses, controlled pauses. The manager asks a tough question, and instead of blanking, your mind supplies a clear, confident answer. You leave the room not just relieved, but proud. That's victory. Or picture yourself at Thanksgiving dinner, sitting across from a relative who loves to stir up arguments. In the past, you might have shut down, stumbled, or even lashed out. But now, with training, you keep calm. You respond, firmly but respectfully, making your point without losing control. The table grows quiet, not because you shouted, but because you spoke with clarity. That's victory. What about in classrooms, where young Americans often freeze when called on by professors? Research from Harvard University shows that students who practiced quick retrieval exercises, simple drills to recall ideas under time pressure, performed significantly better in oral exams. But more than grades, they reported feeling less anxious and more engaged in discussions. The victory here is not just academic, it's psychological freedom. Victory also carries another layer, humility. In Zen practice, the moment you think you've arrived is the moment you lose balance. The same applies to quick thinking. If you train only to dominate conversations, to always win, you miss the deeper lesson. The goal isn't to out-talk everyone, It's to connect, to express, to engage authentically. Sometimes the most powerful quick response is a question, sometimes it's silence. The wisdom lies in knowing when to speak, when to listen, and when to pause. Let's add one more scientific insight to complete this picture. Neuroscientists at MIT studied brain scans of individuals engaged in improvisational activities, like jazz musicians and freestyle rappers. What they found was fascinating. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for self-criticism and overthinking, actually went quiet, while creative centers lit up. In other words, peak quick thinking happens not when we're forcing ourselves to be brilliant, but when we've trained enough to let go of fear. That's the paradox of mastery. You prepare so deeply that when the moment comes, you don't need to think at all. You just act. And isn't that the heart of Eastern philosophy? To act without strain, to move without hesitation, to flow without friction. The Tao Te Ching says, "The master does nothing, yet nothing is left undone." Applied here, it means that when your mind is free of panic, the right words and ideas emerge naturally. Quick thinking, then, is not really about speed. It's about freedom. This freedom is what transforms lives. Think of the American high school student terrified of class participation, who through daily practice becomes a confident speaker. Think of the mid-career professional who used to dread presentations, now delivering them with calm poise. Think of the parent who once avoided tough conversations, now guiding their family with clarity and strength. These are victories not celebrated on stages, but lived in daily life. But here's the key. Victory isn't a finish line, it's a practice. Just like meditation, exercise, or learning an instrument, quick thinking is not something you achieve once and then forget. It's something you nurture every day. You sharpen your sword daily, even when there's no battle. You keep the water flowing, even when the rocks seem far away. That's what ensures you're ready when the challenge comes. And so, as we close this first half of the final chapter, remember, victory is not about being the fastest talker in the room. It's about cultivating a calm, adaptable mind that responds with clarity, strength, and authenticity. It's about carrying within you the quiet assurance that no matter what comes, you will not be silenced by fear. You'll speak, you'll connect, and you'll grow. In the second half of this chapter, we'll tie everything together, science, philosophy, and practice, into a final reflection. We'll look not only at how to maintain quick thinking, but how to use it to live a more present, more resilient, and more fulfilling life. When we think of quick thinking, we often imagine speed, rapid-fire comebacks, witty remarks, sharp debates. But as we've explored throughout this journey, true quick thinking is not merely speed, it's clarity, adaptability, and presence. It's the ability to remain centered when the world tries to knock you off balance. It's about aligning mind and body so that your words carry not only logic, but also authenticity. The Japanese martial arts tradition offers a final insight worth holding close. The concept of mushin, or no mind, describes a state where the fighter moves without conscious thought. It doesn't mean the fighter is empty. It means they are free from hesitation, fear, and overanalysis. Their training is so deeply ingrained that action flows naturally. This is the essence of quick thinking as we seek it, not a frantic scramble, but an effortless response born of discipline. Modern neuroscience affirms this wisdom. Researchers at Stanford have studied how elite athletes perform under pressure. Their findings reveal that the best don't psych themselves up or overanalyze. They rely on muscle memory and mental conditioning. The same principle applies to communication. When you've practiced enough, when you've trained your brain with daily exercises, you don't need to force brilliance. It emerges naturally, just as a runner's stride or a musician's fingers move without conscious command. So how do we maintain this state of readiness in daily life? The answer is deceptively simple: practice, reflection, and rest. Practice. Continue the drills. 5-second decisions, word associations, fast Q&A games. Each repetition sharpens your mental reflexes. Reflection. After conversations or meetings, pause and reflect. What worked? Where did you hesitate? Reflection transforms every experience into a lesson. Rest. Your brain, like a muscle, needs recovery. Sleep, meditation, and time away from screens aren't luxuries. They're essential for mental sharpness. In fact, a study by Harvard Medical School demonstrated that participants who practiced mindful breathing exercises not only performed better in verbal recall tasks, but also showed improved emotional regulation. This means they weren't just faster, they were calmer, more balanced, and more connected in their responses. But there's also a deeper question. What is the purpose of quick thinking? Is it to dominate conversations? To win arguments? To impress others with cleverness? The Eastern philosophers would caution us here. Lao Tzu reminds us, he who knows does not speak, he who speaks does not know. The lesson is not to remain silent, but to remember that words carry weight. Quick thinking must be guided by wisdom, not ego. In American culture, where debates, interviews, and presentations are common battlegrounds, it's easy to think of communication as competition. But let's reframe it. What if the true goal of quick thinking isn't victory over others, but connection with them? What if every sharp response is not a weapon, but a bridge? This perspective transforms quick thinking from a defensive shield into a tool for understanding, empathy, and growth. Let's ground this in daily life. Imagine a workplace meeting. One colleague disagrees with your proposal. In the past, you might have felt attacked and responded with defensiveness, or worse, gone silent. But with training, you pause, breathe, and respond clearly, respectfully, and firmly. Not only do you preserve your dignity, but you also keep the dialogue constructive. That's not just quick thinking, that's wise thinking, or think of parenting. A child throws an unexpected question or challenge your way. Without preparation, it's easy to snap or stumble. But with a trained mind, you answer with patience, guiding them while staying calm. You're modeling for them what it means to think clearly under pressure. In that moment, you're not just practicing quick thinking, you're passing it on. Education, too, plays a role. In American schools, students are often judged on how quickly they can articulate thoughts in discussions or oral exams. But imagine if schools taught the art of mental clarity alongside math or literature. Imagine a generation that not only learns facts, but also how to retrieve and express them with calm confidence. That shift would ripple into every sector: politics, business, science, relationships. So here we are at the end of our journey. We've explored the obstacles, anxiety, lack of practice, lack of focus. We've practiced the tools, 5-second decisions, word associations, conscious breathing, rapid Q&A games. We've drawn from both science and Eastern wisdom to understand what it truly means to think quickly. And now we stand at the resolution. Quick thinking is not a gift given to a lucky few. It's a skill, a discipline, and above all, a mindset. Remember this: your thoughts do not define you until you give them shape in words. Your pauses are not failures, they are spaces where clarity forms. Your mistakes are not defeats, they are teachers disguised as stumbles. And every time you train, whether in the quiet of your room or in the heat of a conversation, you are sharpening your mind, building resilience, and freeing yourself from hesitation. The Zen proverb says, you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes a day, unless you are too busy. Then you should sit for an hour. The same applies to quick thinking. The busier and more pressured your life feels, the more you need to carve out time to train your mind. Because in the end, life will not slow down for you. Conversations won't wait. Opportunities won't pause. But you can prepare so that, when they come, you meet them with calm clarity. As you leave this video, carry with you both the techniques and the philosophy. Practice the exercises daily, but also embrace the mindset of water. Adaptable, fluid, calm. Learn from the samurai's zanshin, from the monk's mushin, from science's understanding of the brain. And above all, trust yourself. Your mind is capable of far more than you imagine. If you've made it this far, let me invite you to reflect. Where in your life do you most need sharper thinking? Is it in your career, your relationships, your studies? Choose one area and commit today to practicing the tools you've learned. Step by step, word by word, you'll notice the change. Not overnight, but surely. And if this journey has inspired you, consider supporting the channel by becoming a member. Your support helps keep content like this alive, blending science, philosophy, and practical exercises to empower people like you to live with more clarity and presence. Together, we can build not just quick thinkers, but wise communicators. So the next time you find yourself in that crucial moment, whether it's an interview, a debate, or a simple conversation, remember, you don't need to panic, you don't need to scramble. You've trained, you're ready. Take a breath and let the right words flow.